President Ibrahim Traoré stood as a beacon of change in Burkina Faso. Young, driven, and with an unyielding love for his people, he was more than just a leader. He was the embodiment of their aspirations for true sovereignty and dignity. His days were a whirlwind of activity, pushing for nationwide electrification, tackling deep-rooted corruption, and tirelessly working to wean his country off the lingering dependencies of its colonial past. His vision was clear: a Burkina Faso standing tall, prosperous, and truly independent. The weight of this dream and the hopes of his people rested squarely on his shoulders. The normal for Traoré was a life lived on the edge of monumental change, a path fraught with both immense promise and unspoken peril. The nation itself, Burkina Faso, pulsed with a fragile but determined energy. It was a land of vibrant culture and resilient people, weary of instability but now galvanized by Traoré's revolutionary zeal. Hope was palpable in the dusty streets of Ouagadougou, yet an undercurrent of tension remained. Decades of external influence and interference had left scars, and many knew that true autonomy would be a hard-fought battle. The inciting incident arrived cloaked in familiarity and celebration. Traoré had just returned from a landmark trip to Russia, a journey that signaled Burkina Faso's bold new direction on the international stage, seeking partnerships based on mutual respect, not subservience. National pride was at its peak. Amidst this atmosphere of triumph, his wife Sita's younger sister Isatu arrived. She had been living in France and returned bearing gifts, among them an elegantly packaged bottle of French perfume for the president. "A little something from Paris for our great leader," Isatu had said, her smile perhaps a little too bright. A subtle alarm bell, honed by months of navigating treacherous political waters, chimed in Traoré's mind. He thanked Isatu warmly, but the gift felt off. France had been openly critical of his administration, viewing his assertive independence as a threat to their long-standing influence in the region. Isatu, fresh from Paris, offering a French luxury item, the pieces clicked into a disquieting pattern. Later that evening, alone in his study, Traoré stared at the ornate bottle. Most would have simply accepted it, a token from family. But for a leader charting a course away from neo-colonial tides, vigilance was a constant companion. He made a decision that would alter everything. He would not use the perfume. Instead, he quietly arranged for the gift to be analyzed by his most trusted security detail. This wasn't just caution. It was an instinct for survival, a crucial first move in a deadly game he hadn't yet fully comprehended. The days that followed were a quiet torment of waiting. Traoré immersed himself in state affairs, but a sliver of his mind remained tethered to the lab where the perfume was being meticulously deconstructed. His chief of security, a grim-faced veteran named Bakary, finally delivered the news in the sterile silence of the president's private office. "The preliminary results are conclusive, Mr. President," Bakary stated, his voice devoid of emotion, yet his eyes conveying the gravity. The perfume contains a highly sophisticated organophosphate compound, odorless, colorless, designed for slow absorption through the skin. It would induce progressive organ failure, mimicking a severe, untreatable illness. Traoré felt a wave of icy calm wash over him, the kind that precedes a storm. He nodded slowly, the image of Isatu's smiling face flashing in his mind. now overlaid with a sinister, ghostly transparency. The elegance of the bottle, the subtle fragrance he'd briefly noted, all a facade for a deadly betrayal. This was no impulsive act of a lone malcontent. The sophistication of the poison spoke of state-level resources, of an enemy with reach and ruthlessness. "Thank you, Bakary," he said, his voice steady. "Ensure the full analysis is triple-checked, and discreetly, find out everything you can about Isatu's recent contacts in Paris." The confrontation with Isatu was one of the hardest moments of Traoré's presidency, perhaps his life. He asked Sita to be present, her sister, her blood. Sita sat pale and composed, though her hands were tightly clasped in her lap. Isatu was summoned to a private presidential annex, a room usually reserved for sensitive diplomatic discussions. She entered, perhaps expecting a casual family chat, but the somber faces of Traoré, Sita, and Bakari, standing silently by the door, immediately told her this was something else. "Isatu," Traoré began, his tone gentle but firm, "we need to talk about the gift you brought me from Paris." He watched her carefully, a flicker of something. Fear? Guilt? Isatu forced a nervous laugh. "The perfume? Did you like it? It's a very exclusive brand." Sita spoke then, her voice trembling slightly but clear. "Isatu, sister, please, just tell us the truth. What is in that perfume?" The directness from Sita, the pain in her eyes seemed to pierce Isatu's carefully constructed composure. Her bravado shattered, her face crumpled, and she sank into a chair, great heaving sobs racking her body. "They made me do it," she finally choked out between gasps, tears streaming. They said they would help me. Money, a new life. But then they showed me pictures of my parents. Of you, Sita. They said if I didn't cooperate." Over the next hour, the full, sordid story emerged. During her extended stay in Paris, Isatu, perhaps a little naive and craving a more glamorous life, had been cultivated by operatives. They were charming at first, offering connections, showering her with attention and small luxuries. Then came the proposition. A simple task: deliver a gift to the president, her brother-in-law. When she hesitated, the charm turned to ice. They revealed their true nature, their affiliation with powerful Western intelligence networks who saw Traoré's revolution as a direct threat to their continental interests. The promises of wealth became intertwined with explicit threats against her family back in Burkina Faso, and even against her own safety in France. They painted Traoré as a dangerous radical leading the country to ruin, suggesting she would be a patriot, a savior, by helping them moderate him. The perfume, they assured her, was merely a potent sedative meant to incapacitate him temporarily for a critical intervention. She had chosen to believe the lie, or perhaps the alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. Traoré listened, his heart a knot of conflicting emotions. He saw the frightened young woman before him, a pawn in a geopolitical game far beyond her understanding. The tendrils of these foreign powers were long, capable of reaching into the very heart of his family. The betrayal was profound, but Isatu's confession also revealed the enemy's desperation. Sita, despite her own anguish, reached out and placed a comforting hand on her sister's shaking shoulder, a gesture of immense grace amidst the wreckage. Later that night, alone with Sita, the full weight of the situation settled upon Traoré. They used her, Sita. They twisted her fear and her ambition. Sita, her eyes red-rimmed but her voice resolute, nodded. She was weak, Ibrahim, but they are the true monsters. What do we do? We fight, Traoré said, a new fire hardening his gaze. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about them believing they can manipulate and murder their way to controlling our destiny. They underestimate us. They underestimate Africa. The palace was placed on a silent high alert. Trust, once a given with close associates, now became a carefully guarded commodity. Traoré convened his most senior and trusted advisors, Bakri, his sharp minister of foreign affairs, and his pragmatic chief of staff. The discussions were tense, carried out in hushed tones. How to respond? A quiet arrest and investigation risked the truth being buried, the enemy operating undeterred. Going public with accusations against a major Western power like France was a monumental risk, potentially inviting sanctions, further destabilization, or even open conflict. They want to make an example of me to show what happens when an African leader steps out of line, Traoré surmised. If I am silent, they win. If I die, they win. His Minister of Foreign Affairs cautioned, Mr. President, a direct accusation without irrefutable public proof will be dismissed as propaganda. They will turn it against us. Bakari, ever the security man, added, the internal threat is contained for now with Isatu. But they will have other assets. We must assume we are deeply compromised. Traoré absorbed their counsel. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but inaction was a slower, more certain death for their revolution. He knew what he had to do. The enemy had chosen a clandestine battlefield. He would drag them into the light. Yes, the decision was made. President Traoré would not allow this insidious attack to remain in the shadows. The days leading up to his planned national address were thick with meticulous preparation and palpable tension. He worked closely with his core team, scripting a message that was both a damning indictment and a rallying cry. Every word was weighed, every potential consequence debated. Sita was a constant source of quiet strength, her presence a reminder of what he was fighting for: family, nation, and a future free from such insidious interference. He knew his words would send shockwaves far beyond Burkina Faso's borders, potentially inviting retribution. But the alternative, silence, was a betrayal of everything he stood for. The evening of the address, the nation held its breath. Traoré walked to the podium, not as a victim, but as a leader, forged in the crucible of betrayal and attack. His calm demeanor belied the iron resolve that now defined him. The cameras rolled, broadcasting his image across the country and via satellite to the watching world. My fellow Burkinabe, citizens of Africa, friends of freedom, he began, his voice steady and resonant. Tonight I come before you not just as your president, but as a servant of the truth, however ugly that truth may be. He then methodically, chillingly, laid bare the assassination plot. He spoke of the poisoned gift, the sophisticated toxin designed for a slow, deceptive death. He revealed, with a tone more of sorrow than anger, the coercion of a family member, Isatu, by forces far greater and more sinister than she could comprehend. She was a pawn, he stated, his gaze direct and unwavering. A tool in the hands of those who fear our rise, who seek to maintain their dominion over our continent through Shodwan, through manipulation, and when they deem it necessary, through murder. Then came the moment the world was waiting for. These shadowy figures, Traoré continued, his voice hardening, are not phantoms. They are agents of powerful Western interests, interests whose historical and ongoing interference in Africa is a matter of record. The methods, the resources, the audacity of this plot bear the hallmarks of state-sponsored operations, with strong indications pointing towards circles within the French establishment, who have never accepted our nation's true desire for sovereignty. He didn't shout, but his words landed like hammer blows. They sought to extinguish the flame of our revolution, to silence a voice daring to speak of a new Africa. They failed. He concluded with a powerful call to unity and defiance. Burkina Faso will not be cowed. We will not surrender our hard-won independence. This attack on my life is an attack on every one of you, on our shared dream of a dignified and prosperous future. Let this moment not be one of fear, but of renewed resolve. Our struggle continues. Our spirit is unbreakable. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Across Burkina Faso, citizens poured into the streets, not in panic, but in a massive display of solidarity. Anger at the foreign powers was palpable, but so was an immense surge of pride in their president's courage. Chants of Traoré, our hero, and down with neo-colonialism echoed through the night. The plot designed to fracture the nation had instead forged an even stronger bond between the people and their leader. Internationally, a storm erupted. Accused Western governments, including France, issued swift and vehement denials, decrying the accusations as baseless. Yet, in many parts of Africa and the developing world, Traoré's words resonated deeply, met with nods of understanding and quiet admiration. He had dared to say publicly what many had long whispered privately. Issatu was formally arrested and held under secure, humane conditions. The legal process would follow its course, but Traoré made it clear that while justice must be served, the primary architects of the plot were those who had exploited her. His focus remained on the larger enemy. In the weeks that followed, Burkina Faso existed in a new reality. The new normal was one of heightened security, an awareness of unseen enemies, but also an electrifying sense of purpose. The revolutionary fervor Traoré had ignited now burned brighter than ever. Investigations into the full extent of the foreign network continued, a constant reminder that this was but one battle in a much larger war. President Ibrahim Traoré, having looked death in the eye and exposed the forces behind it, was no longer just a national leader. He had become a symbol of Africa's unyielding resistance, a testament to the enduring power of courage in the face of imperial ambition. The fight for Burkina Faso's soul and indeed for Africa's true independence was far from over. It had entered a new, more overt and more determined phase. President Traoré's bold address sent ripples across the globe. What are your thoughts on his decision to publicly confront these powerful forces? Leave your comments below, share this story, and subscribe for more narratives of courage in the fight for sovereignty.